You're listening to Bloomberg Businessweek with Massar and Tim Stenovec on Bloomberg Radio.
Yeah, just want to be your everything token, actually.
Do you?
I don't know. I don't know. Listen, we have a lot of thoughts about this. We've talked to a lot of guests about this, but the end of the crypto winter, man, it has been heralded by rising token prices and the long-awaited approval of Bitcoin exchange-traded funds.
Yeah, okay, true, but a key segment of the digital asset universe has lagged behind, despite previously being one of the sector's hottest corners. We're talking, of course, about non-fungible tokens, NFTs. They're based on blockchain and represent a unique ownership of assets, like images or even physical objects. They saw global sales plummet 63% to $8.7 billion last year. That's according to data tracker CryptoSlam.
Remember when we talked with Chris Rouser for Pursuits about
the fashion
NFTs?
I think that was probably 2021.
You go shopping in kind of a virtual universe and you buy
NFTs.
For designer NFTs.
Yeah, for your.
You can't wear them.
Not
you spend a lot of money.
But it's like Second Life type of thing.
Yeah, I just
anyway. You can wear your Gucci in the metaverse.
I think our guests are going to get nervous because we're a bit skeptical. Anyway, meanwhile, keep in mind the industry bellwether Bitcoin has surged almost 160% in 2023. A little bit of perspective there for you.
Okay, so I'm really curious what our next guests have to say about all of this. And we got some time with them, so looking forward to this conversation. Scott Duke Kominers is professor of business administration at Harvard Business School. He's also a research partner at A16Z Crypto, Andreessen Horowitz, that is. And Steve Kaczynski has worked in communications at Progressive Insurance and Nestle. And together, they are the authors of the new book, The Everything Token, How NFTs and Web3 Will Transform the Way We Buy, Sell, and Create. Scott joins us from Cambridge, Massachusetts, and Steve from Ohio. Scott, I want to start with you because this book came across my desk, and it's out now, and I thought to myself, what a wild time to actually be publishing this book, because NFTs, to me, seem to have peaked a couple of years ago with all the FOMO and like post-COVID kind of YOLO trading. How do you respond to that? That the book, that right now seems like a strange time for this book.
So first of all, I understand why you might feel that way, but in many senses, I actually think, in the last year and a half, and especially really in the last, 6 to 9 months, we've seen far more exciting and more creative, and I think more, sort of mass market and one might even say sort of realistic, applications of NFTs. It's really much more, as you said in the intro, these are a general purpose technology for defining ownership of both digital and potentially physical assets. And we've seen brands do all sorts of new experiments with them, some of them quite successfully. And really, sort of part of the exercise of writing the book was we were trying to understand what are the sort of fundamental principles that define this new asset class for business, right? How do you build a business around NFTs or integrate them into your existing brand? And what are those principles that survive, sort of irrespective of the state of the market or whatever, that are really about, sort of what is the value of NFTs for business and society?
So what is the value of NFTs for businesses and society? And Scott, let's stay with you for one more moment.
Sure, of course. So first of all, as I said, it's a general purpose technology. Some uses are simply for improving the functioning of markets that have already been very complicated to manage. So if you think about digital tickets, right? Every time you buy a digital ticket, you get a QR code in your email. And if you want to buy one in the secondary market, right, you're trying to get to that sold out Hamilton show or something of the sort, you have to be really concerned that the person who's reselling the ticket to you might have sold it to 15 other people, right? It's just a QR code. They can forward the same email to a bunch of people at once. And businesses spend a lot of time and energy building infrastructure to try and make those transactions safe. NFTs are just a strictly better technology for this problem, right? They're a unique digital asset, and the second it's transferred to one person, they know that they've received it and no one else has it. You can prove you're the owner of it. Similarly, we're seeing a variety of sort of new types of identity records. So think about my friends at Bloomberg Opinion have recently been writing lots of articles about these concerns around AI and deepfakes. NFTs are cross-platform identity records that you can use to prove you are who you say you are on many different platforms, independent of the platform architecture, and take with you as you move across the internet. And that sort of technology is becoming all the more important. And then last, and sort of what Steve and I write about as one of the biggest category, there are these there's branded utility that can be built on top of NFTs. So you start with NFTs as an ownership record, you build utility on top of them, use that to drive a new form of customer identity, and from there form customer community that drives the brand forward. And this is something brands have been trying to do for a very long time, right?
Yeah.
They've always wanted to extend the relationship with the consumer into the product experience. But it's been very hard to do before NFTs.
And Scott, we should note you were former columnist for Bloomberg Opinion, so you certainly do have a lot of friends over at Bloomberg Opinion. Hey, I want to bring in Steve Kaczynski here, who joins us from Ohio this afternoon. For people who are watching on YouTube or watching on Bloomberg Originals right now, Steve, they can tell just by seeing your background that you are a fan of NFTs. I see an Ape Fest picture in the background. Is that a real Bored Ape back there? I can't tell because I don't have the certificate. Is that a real Bored Ape back there?
It is a picture of a real Bored Ape,
Okay.
and I do have the digital certificate to prove it. And it's funny because like what you all talked about is actually exactly the reason we wrote this book. Because I think a lot of people saw astronomical sales and they thought, well, this is like a weird sort of like fad industry. But people forget that's how a lot of industries start in the tech world, right? I mean, there are records of the internet being a passive fad, or video games being a passive fad, or cell phones not having ubiquitous use. But of course, the way the technology improves and is built upon changes that. And I can say as somebody who was, in the mid '90s in middle school coding websites using HTML, like pre-Google and all that, this is the most excited I've been about a technology because of the general purpose use, particularly as it relates to my background in brand building. And I work with Starbucks on their beta program, Starbucks Odyssey, and they use it as a great example that has nothing to do with the over-financialization of the space.
So does this mean, it's interesting, we had a conversation with an individual over at Adobe, and as people start to use generative AI to include images, NFTs in terms of kind of protecting the license of a logo, is there something, Steve, that makes a business case for it?
I mean, they could, but actually, to be honest, I think that a business case like that is narrow compared to the wide spectrum of uses and the ways they would do it. I would say a business would more use it to prove ownership of a asset that a customer owns, to turn that customer from maybe a sort of individual who supports the business into a super fan in various ways, which again, we can discuss what those individuals are. But
I get it for art, like, right, that you get. That makes sense to me to have kind of an NFT associated with a piece of art to some extent.
like a certificate of authenticity, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
A deed on a home. This is why blockchain makes sense to me.
Okay, what about for, and thanks to crypto editor Mike Regan, who I spoke to ahead of this interview.
Yeah.
He made the point to me that, okay, imagine, you buy a concert ticket and we have about a minute left, Scott, so come back on in here. What about like the use of a concert ticket, for example, that would give you access beyond just actually seeing the show? We have a minute and then we're going to come back and do more with you.
Like backstage access?
Yeah. What do you think of that, Scott?
Exactly. No, 100%. And what's cool about them is, both the creator, the artist, whomever can provide that sort of value, and also third parties can, again, because these things are, it's more like having a physical ticket than like having a QR code that just anyone could replicate. You can prove that you are the owner of the asset. And so if a local restaurant wants to, provide you with a coupon, for a drink or dessert after the show, you can do that too, and they can do it without having to interface with the with the original creator. And so both the artist can give you a backstage tour, and then a local restaurant can give everyone who had a certain tier of ticket a drink, and like all of this can happen around a single asset. And NFTs are particularly powerful for this because of the third-party component as well.
All right, interesting stuff. We're going to continue. We have lots more to come. Scott Duke, Kominers, is going to stay with us, professor of business administration at Harvard Business School, a research partner at 16Z Crypto, and of course, a former Bloomberg Opinion columnist also.
Steve Kaczynski, who is the co-author, along with Scott, of The Everything Token, How NFTs and Web3 Will Transform the Way We Buy, Sell, and Create.
I want to get back to our guest, Scott Duke, Kominers, professor of business administration, former Bloomberg Opinion columnist. He's at Harvard Business School, a research partner at A16Z Crypto.
Yeah, A16Z, Andreessen Horowitz.
Yep. Yeah. And Steve Kaczynski, also with us. He's worked in communications at Progressive Insurance and Nestle. Together, they are the authors of a new book, The Everything Token, How NFTs and Web3 Will Transform the Way We Buy, Sell, and Create. Scott's out there in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Steve is joining us from Ohio. I feel like we've been talking, though, about this happening for years now. Having said that, Scott, let me kick it back to you for a moment. So, to quote kind of a Beatles song, I woke up, got out of bed. Tell me how NFTs could impact me, Carol Massar.
Okay, like from the morning moment you get up?
Yeah.
You probably so you maybe you're like getting some coffee, so you get some coffee from Starbucks, and Starbucks' new Odyssey reward program is sort of taking a track of what you've consumed and discover you've finished a journey. You get your new coffee stamp, so that's one thing. And maybe you chose your coffee because Odyssey, as part of the program, also directly incentivized you to go and learn some things about the different coffee varieties they have, and you became a more educated consumer of Starbucks. You read the newspaper too, right? So you're probably logging into Bloomberg Opinion to read the morning opinion reports or the opinion articles, but then also you're going to go cross-platform. And maybe you have an NFT for a subscription that lets you into 3 different newspapers at the same time, or all the news associated with your local sports team.
That makes sense.
It's each page you log in, you connect your crypto wallet, it reads the NFT, it shows you the sports news while you sip your Starbucks coffee and earn rewards.
Okay. Are you satisfied, Carol? You're getting there? Okay, she's a skeptic, but she's getting less skeptical.
Hey,
each of us, I got to tell you, each of us were struck a couple of weeks ago when we heard BlackRock's Larry Fink talk about tokenization with our own David West. And I want to play a clip of that. Check out what he had to say.
We believe the next step going forward will be the tokenization of financial assets. And that means every stock, every bond will have its own, basically, CUSIP. It'll be on one general ledger. Every investor, you and I, will have our own number, our own identification. We could rid ourselves of all issues around illicit activities around bonds and stocks and digital by having a tokenization. But the most importantly thing, we could customize strategies through tokenization that fits every individual.
Tokenization that fits every individual. That, once again, was BlackRock's Larry Fink talking tokenization with our own David Weston just a couple of weeks ago. Steve, I want to bring you in here and get your reaction to that, because we do hear a lot about tokenization of traditional financial assets potentially disrupting a lot of middlemen and intermediary work that is done on Wall Street. But take us through what exactly that would mean for the financial industry.
Yeah, I mean, for the financial industry, what that means is that it sort of does exactly as you said, remove those middlemen and make for a more clear transaction, meaning that it is a very clear ownership going from one to the other, tracked on a ledger. This applies to the entire financial industry. This can apply to real world assets that you're talking about, where you physically pin a digital asset to something to prove digital ownership, which takes away a lot of potential issues you have coming from one intermediary to the other. It makes it a much more clean transaction, as, again, the blockchain is just a cleaner technology that removes a lot of friction as you start to tokenize not just sort of the financial assets, but any physical asset you own in order to sort of build upon it.
Steve, is this the biggest opportunity for Web3 for the blockchain?
I mean, it depends on sort of who you ask and how you ask it, right? Because there is the really poetic use of the blockchain where when somebody is fleeing a company of unrest and they have a blockchain-based credential, like, say, a teaching degree. Well, when they go to a new country, if they have to flee quickly, their money digitally can go with them, and their sort of degrees and credentials can then go with them in a provable way, meaning that they don't sort of have to start over when they get there. So that to me is always the sort of end goal right there. And then from a financial perspective, I just think the actual way companies are going to be able to create entire new sectors within their companies is actually the biggest financial aspect and opportunity, because it means that a company is going to be able to create entirely new revenue streams while creating aligned incentive structures with their customers all at once. It's an interesting system where everybody can win, both the consumers and the brand. The brand can build value back in the NFTs. The NFTs can then raise in value. And so the customers can then decide where they want to purchase or utilize them.
All right. Well, with anything that's kind of new, there is the question of oversight and regulation. And this is something we've been trying to figure out. You know, the whole idea of digital, currencies is this idea that it's outside the traditional network. So you guys write in the book, at the same time as with any novel asset class, NFTs raise questions about regulation. So, Scott, come on back in here. Who will ultimately have oversight of this? Because we're going to need something, yes?
Yeah, and again, I don't have a clear answer or prescription on this, but it's very complicated, of course, because these digital assets can have many different functionalities, and their functionalities can evolve over time potentially, right? We talk in the book about something that starts as a collectible brand asset and can potentially take on other functionalities, right? You get a ticket, and then gradually, like, it becomes the anchor of a rewards program or something of the sort. I think it's very important to think through, sort of how those different assets like interact across different categories and so forth. And it makes it a really challenging problem, but unfortunately I don't have any easy answers.
Hey, Scott, we have like a minute left, and I just want to talk about the metaverse real quick, because a couple of years ago, there was a lot of hype around it. I mean, look at Facebook's name change to Meta, how NFTs would play an important role, but a lot of that has seemed to die out, and many big tech companies are chasing the shiny new object of AI. Was the potential of the metaverse overhyped?
So, Steve and I talk about this in the book. We take a very expansive concept of the metaverse. We think the 3D world thing is not exactly the right way to think about it. The metaverse is all the digital spaces we interact in. Like, we're in a metaverse space right now. I'm calling in over Zoom, talking with you.
That's a good point.
And what NFTs enable you to do is to bring your digital asset from place to place, right? Like that what is your NFT day? It's like you have a single master account that is what holds your subscriptions, it's what holds your coffee rewards. It's all of your different social media identities, lets you share your reputation across them. And so in that sense, we're having more and more metaverse interactions as we spend more and more digital time, especially since the start of the pandemic. And NFTs are a key enabler of that. And as you say, AI is going to play into this as a component. But the more AI starts to distort and like confuse those spaces, the more important it is for people to be able to build core and trusted and cross-platform digital identities for themselves.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there, and hopefully we can continue this conversation in the future, because
it's got to come back.
We have a lot of questions, but it's really fascinating. Scott Duke, Kominers, Steve Kaczynski, their new book, The Everything Token, How NFTs and Web3 Will Transform the Way We Buy, Sell, and Create. Guys, thank you so much. This is Bloomberg.